I waited until 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before her birthday would be over. I sat in the dark, kitchen light off, phone screen glowing on the table like it was holy. I kept checking the Wi-Fi, tapping the app, refreshing, opening messages, closing them. Nothing. The cake sat untouched in the fridge. Chocolate with raspberry filling, her favorite. I even bought those tall, skinny candles she used to love as a kid. Still nothing. I texted her one more time. Happy birthday, love. I'm thinking about you. The message didn't send. At first, I thought the signal was bad. But then I saw it, that little red exclamation mark. Message failed to send. I tried again. Same thing. Then I switched to Messenger. Then WhatsApp. Then Instagram. All gone. Her name wasn't there anymore. Her profile picture gone. Her feed gone. Like she'd evaporated. And that's when it hit me. She blocked me. Not just on one app. Everywhere. iMessage. Instagram. Facebook. PayPal. Even Venmo. She didn't want my words. She didn't want my love. She didn't even want my money. She wanted silence. And she got it. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there. Completely still. The way you do when your ears are ringing and your brain is too stunned to make sound. Outside it was raining. Not heavy. Just that soft Oregon kind of rain that sounds like static on the window. And I remember thinking, this is what the end of something feels like. It doesn't come with screaming. Or closure. Or final words. It comes with one blocked notification. And a chocolate cake no one's going to eat. I stayed up all night, staring at the phone like it might suddenly buzz. Like maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she'd call. Say it was an accident. Say she was overwhelmed. But no call came. And the worst part is, I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep down, I think I always knew this was coming. She only called when she needed something. Rent. Tuition. A new tablet. A quick loan for groceries while she waited on a commission. She never remembered my birthday. She forgot our anniversary trip every single year. She never asked me how work was. But I still sent the money. I still picked up. Every single time. Because that's what moms do, right? We keep showing up. Even when they don't. Even when they slam the door in our face. Even when they delete our number. Even when they block us on everything. We still hope. Hope that one day they'll remember. Hope that one day they'll thank us. Hope that one day they'll call. But that night, staring into that empty phone, I realized something I hadn't let myself think before. Hope can be cruel. Because it makes you wait for someone who already left. It makes you believe they're coming back. When really, they're just gone. And suddenly, I wasn't just a blocked contact. I was free. Free to stop hoping. Free to stop checking. Free to start breathing again. And still, even with all that clarity, even with the hurt settling in like fog, I couldn't throw away the cake. I left it there, in the fridge, because some part of me still wanted to believe she might come back. Not for the cake, but for me. For the mom who never stopped choosing her. Even when she stopped choosing me. She was 5 when she told me she wanted to be an artist. We were sitting on the floor, painting with Q-tips dipped in cheap watercolors. She held up a crooked little blob of orange and green and said, "This one's you." I still have it. It's faded and curled at the edges, stuffed in the back of a drawer I never open. Back then, I believed in everything she said. Every little idea, every dream, every phase. One year it was ballerina. The next, marine biologist. Then sculptor. Then photographer. And every time I was all in. I bought ballet shoes she wore once. I subscribed to National Geographic Kids. I paid for clay, cameras, courses, camps. No questions asked. Because I thought that's what love looked like. Support no matter what. Encouragement, no matter how expensive. Sacrifice, no matter the cost. And it did cost. Not just money, but time. Energy. Pieces of myself I didn't even notice I was giving away. I sold my mother's necklace to pay for Harper's first trip to New York, a teen art immersion course she'd found online. I told people I was downsizing when I sold my car. Took the bus to work in the rain for months, so she could get a used MacBook and a subscription to Adobe. I didn't resent it. Not then. I felt proud, like I was investing in something beautiful. A girl with fire in her belly and color in her hands. But slowly, the gratitude started to fade. The texts got shorter. The thanks got colder. Until one day, they stopped altogether. No happy Mother's Day. No housework. No, are you okay? Just, can you send it by Thursday? Need it for rent. It's urgent. And I send it. Every time. Even when my fridge was empty. Even when my back went out and I had to cancel a shift. Even when I had to put off the dentist. Because somehow her life always felt more important than mine. She was building something. I was just maintaining. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared that if I said no, even once, I'd lose her. That she'd disappear from my life the same way her father had. He left when she was 2. No note. No money. Just silence. And I promised myself I'd never let her feel that kind of abandonment. So I overcompensated. I became everything. Mom. Dad. Sponsor. Emotional first responder. And she let me. God, she let me. She grew up knowing that I would always catch her. No matter how far she jumped. No matter how hard she fell. And when she turned 25, she said she wanted to move to Austin. Said it was for the art scene. Said she'd found a collective, a studio, a cheap room with good light. I wired her everything I had in savings. It wasn't much. Just under $12,000. She said she'd pay me back. I told her she didn't have to. But somewhere deep down, I hoped she would. Not the money. The gesture. The acknowledgement that what I'd given her mattered. That I mattered. But it never came. Instead, silence. Weeks would pass without a word. And when I finally heard from her, it was always the same. Mom, I hate to ask again, but... And I'd type, of course, before I even read the rest. Because I couldn't be the mom who said no. Not after everything. Not after 27 years of yes. But sitting alone that night, phone in my hand, messages blocked. Something in me cracked. Not a dramatic shatter. Not an explosion. Just a quiet, internal shift. The kind you don't notice until after it's happened. Like a hairline fracture you've been walking on for years. That finally gives out. And suddenly, you don't want to carry it anymore. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Just because you're tired. And you start to realize, love without boundaries isn't love. It's a transaction. And I wasn't her mother anymore. I was a credit line. A background app. A name in her phone that meant instant solve. But not call back. Not care. Not love. And for the first time, I wasn't okay with that. It always started the same way. No hi mom. No how are you. Just a notification. A text. Short. To the point. Can you talk? Or, hey, quick thing. Sometimes it was emergency. Sometimes urgent. But it was always about money. And I'd feel it in my body before I even opened the message. That little jolt behind the ribs. Like a muscle clenching before the blow. It's strange how the body knows. Even before the heart catches up. I'd reply fast. Too fast. Of course, what's going on? Every time. And she'd tell me. Rent went up. Tablet broke. Commission fell through. Flight changed. Roommate drama. It didn't matter. She was stressed, overwhelmed, drowning. And I was the life raft. I always send it. Even when my own rent was due. Even when I had to split groceries into 2 cards. Even when I lied to the pharmacy and said I'd come back tomorrow. Because somehow, her crisis always outranked mine. She was the artist. The dreamer. The one building a life that meant something. I was the nurse who stayed in the same apartment for 12 years. The one with the coffee stains on every uniform. And a back that cracked when I bent over. I didn't resent her. Not really. I resented the story. The one where she was the sun. And I was just supposed to orbit. Where her deadlines were sacred. And mine were invisible. Where she was figuring herself out. And I was doing fine. Even when I wasn't. There was a day. I remember this so clearly. I was standing in line at the DMV. Trying to renew my license on my lunch break. It was hot. I was dizzy. I hadn't eaten. And she called. I thought, maybe this time it's different. Maybe she just wants to talk. So I picked up. Hey, Mom. Her voice was cheerful. I hate to ask, but could you send me $200? My landlord's being insane. And I said yes. Because I always said yes. And then I sat on the curb with my head in my hands. And a vending machine granola bar for lunch. I told myself it was fine. She needed me. That meant I mattered. Right. That meant I was still useful. Still loved. Even if the only time she said, "Love you," was right after she got the money. I remember asking myself, if I stopped sending, would she still call? And I didn't like the answer. So I pushed it down. I made excuses. She's just under pressure. She's young. She's figuring it out. But how long does young last? At 27, I was working double shifts. Cooking dinner, raising her, balancing checkbooks by hand. At 27, she was flying to Miami for a week-long art retreat. On my credit card. It wasn't just the money. It was the erasure. She didn't know my favorite movie. She forgot my birthday last year. She didn't ask about my job. When I switched departments, I was a fixture. A faucet she turned when she needed something. And when she didn't, silence. Weeks would pass. I'd watch her stories, smiling in rooftop bars, posing at galleries, captioning everything with my people. And I'd think, am I not her people? Is motherhood something that just expires? Like an old driver's license? Useful until it isn't. Valid until the day she doesn't need it anymore. I started checking her Venmo more than her texts. Because at least there, I knew she was alive. I watched her pay roommates, Uber drivers, bartenders. But not once did I see my name. And still, I sent it. Because I didn't know how not to. Because saying no felt like betrayal. Because I thought, if I said no, she'd vanish. But here's the cruel part. She vanished anyway. Even with the yes. Even with the transfers. Even with the silence I swallowed. Every time I wanted to say, this hurts. She disappeared. And I stayed. Right where I was. Phone in hand. Waiting. Not for money. Not for praise. Just for her. And I started to wonder, what does that make me? Not a mom. Not really. Not anymore. More like a service. A subscription. Auto-renewal every month. And now that I'd missed a payment, she'd canceled. Without warning. Without goodbye. Without mercy. And yet, I still checked the phone. Just in case. Because some habits die slow. Especially the ones you built out of love. It started with a headache. The kind that sits behind your eyes like a weight. I thought I was just tired. Maybe dehydrated. Maybe low on sleep. I took 2 Advil, drank a glass of water, and kept working. Another 10-hour shift. 2 patients coding. A toddler with a broken arm. An old woman who kept asking for a daughter that never came. By hour 9, the lights felt too bright. My hands were shaking. I dropped a tray of supplies and just stood there frozen. Nina, the other nurse, touched my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. But I wasn't. My knees gave out in the locker room. Right in front of the vending machine. And for a second, I felt nothing. Just the cold tile on my face. And the strange relief of finally falling. They ran tests. Blood pressure sky high. Heart rate erratic. Told me I was lucky it didn't turn into a stroke. They wanted to keep me overnight. But I said no. I couldn't afford the stay. Not with Harper's last withdrawal clearing tomorrow. So they released me. At 2:47 a.m. I didn't have anyone to call. No family nearby. No partner. No friend I hadn't slowly drifted away from. So I called an Uber. Sat in the back seat, holding the discharge papers like they were a report card. I stared out the window as we drove past empty streets and closed gas stations, past silent homes with glowing porches. I felt like a ghost, watching a world I didn't belong to anymore. At home, the fridge buzzed. The sink leaked like always. The birthday cake was still there. And for some reason, that's what broke me. That stupid cake. Still waiting in the dark. Just like me. I sat on the floor in my scrubs. Legs curled up, arms around my knees. And I cried like a child. Ugly, shaking sobs. The kind of crying that makes your ribs ache. Because I realized I'd given everything I had to someone who wouldn't even know if I'd died that night. She wouldn't have seen the missed call. Wouldn't have heard the news. Wouldn't have come to the hospital. Because she blocked me. Everywhere. She made sure I couldn't reach her. And I still wanted to. Even then. Even in that moment. That's how deep the need goes. To be seen. To be loved. To matter. I thought about all the times I'd put her first. The hours, the dollars, the nights I didn't sleep. So she could have peace. And when I needed help. Just once. She wasn't there. Not because she couldn't be. But because she didn't want to be. And that's a different kind of pain. It's not just abandonment. It's erasure. Like I was a story she'd finished reading. And decided not to keep. And still, I wanted to believe it was a mistake. That maybe her phone broke. Maybe she was going through something. Maybe. But hope doesn't pay bills. Hope doesn't pick you up from the ER. Hope doesn't check if you made it home. Hope just leaves you sitting on the floor, next to a cake you can't even look at anymore. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a mother. I felt like a fool. A woman who raised a stranger. A woman who spent 27 years teaching someone how to take, but never how to stay. The next morning, I called my bank. Not to transfer more money. Not to cover her rent. But to take myself off her account. No more auto payments. No more emergency wires. No more quiet erasures of my own needs. I didn't know what I was doing. Not really. But it felt like a first step. Not away from her, but back to myself. And it was quiet. There was no big declaration. No text. No confrontation. Just a phone call. And a deep, shaky breath. And then silence. The kind of silence that hurts at first. But then starts to feel like air. Like space. Like maybe, just maybe, freedom. It didn't happen in some big dramatic moment. There was no screaming, no slamming doors, no final straw. It was a Tuesday. I was making tea. And my phone buzzed. Hey, sorry to ask again. Could you send $700 for rent? Just this once. Promise. And I just stared at it. $700. I had exactly $742 in my checking account. Enough for groceries, utilities, maybe a bus ticket if I needed to get to work on foot again. Old me would have sent it without blinking. Would have opened the banking app, typed in her name, and gone back to microwaving leftovers for dinner. But not this time. This time I stared at that message and realized I felt nothing. Not anger. Not guilt. Not urgency. Just emptiness. Like the part of me that always jumped. Always gave. Always said yes. Had finally gone quiet. And in that quiet, a different thought showed up. What if I spent it on me? Not all of it. Not in revenge. Not to punish her. But just for me. For the first time in years. It felt stupid at first. Indulgent. But then I opened my saved Airbnb bookmarks. Places I'd never dared to book. Places I scrolled through at night like a fantasy. And there it was. A tiny camper cabin in Skagit Valley. Up north, tucked into pine trees, with a skylight over the bed. 4 nights. $635. I booked it. Without asking anyone's permission. Without checking her feed to see what she was doing. Without guilt. Then I made another cup of tea. And replied to her message. Not this time. That's all I said. No explanation. No apology. No emoji. Just those 3 words. I turned my phone off. Packed a weekend bag. And left. The drive was slow. Quiet. No music. Just the sound of tires on wet pavement. And the hum of the heater against the chill. I stopped for gas. And bought myself a blueberry muffin. The kind she always loved as a kid. The kind I never ate. Because I always saved them for her. I ate the whole thing. In the car. Windows fogged. Crumbs in my lap. It was the best thing I'd tasted in years. At the cabin there was no signal. No Wi-Fi. No noise. Just wind. And trees. And the sound of my own breath in a room that finally didn't ask me for anything. I made tea. I lit a candle. I read a book cover to cover. And I slept. Deeply. No anxiety. No buzzing phone. No dreams of missing her calls. Just stillness. On the 3rd morning, I found a trail behind the cabin and followed it through moss and wet pine needles until I hit the edge of a cold, glassy lake. I sat on a rock and wrote in a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Nothing profound. Just little things. What the trees smelled like. The way the light moved on the water. How quiet it all was, and how unfamiliar that felt. And I realized something. I hadn't forgotten who I was. I just paused. For so long. Paused myself for someone else's soundtrack. Someone else's storyline. Someone else's survival. And now, I was hitting play again. Not loudly. Not recklessly. Just gently. And when I got back to the cabin, there were no missed calls. No messages. No sorry from her. No thank you. Just silence. But for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Because that no, that tiny, unglamorous, quiet no, wasn't a rejection. It was a boundary. It was me saying, I exist too. Not just as a mother. Not just as a bank account. Not just as a last resort. But as a person. And if she didn't see that, that was her loss. I wasn't cutting her off. I was cutting myself free. And freedom, even in its smallest form, tastes like blueberry muffins. In a fogged-up car. On the road to somewhere new. 3 weeks. That's how long it took. After the no. After the trip. After I stopped answering her messages. 3 weeks of silence. Then, one afternoon while I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. A new number. No contact name. But I knew it was her. I felt it in my chest before I even picked up. I waited. Let it ring twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Softly. Hello. Silence. Then her voice. Hey. Flat. No emotion. No apology. Just, hey. I waited. I don't get it, she said. You ignore me now? Really? I almost laughed. Ignored her? I wanted to say, you blocked me first. You shut the door and locked it. You erased me. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I sat down and let her talk. She rambled. About stress. About her roommate. About how hard it is to be on her own. She said, you don't understand what it's like. You had a normal job. You had support. And then she said it. The line that stayed in my chest for days. I just wish you hadn't given up on me. And that's when I felt it. That quiet shift again. Not anger. Not rage. Clarity. I took a breath. And I said, I didn't give up on you, Harper. I gave up on forgetting myself. Silence. She didn't like that. Wow, she said. So now you're the victim? I shook my head, even though she couldn't see. No, I said. I'm not the victim. And you're not the villain. But this version of us, where I carry the weight, and you pretend it's invisible, that's over. She got defensive. You think I'm a bad person? No, I said again. I think you're used to me saying yes. And now that I'm not, it feels like rejection. I heard her breathing. Fast. Agitated. But she didn't hang up. So I kept going. I'm not angry at you, Harper. But I am done being the only one reaching out. The only one sacrificing. The only one showing up. I never asked you to. Yes, I said gently. You did. Every time you texted. Every time you sent a PayPal link without a single "How are you?" Every time you disappeared until you needed something. She went quiet. And I let the silence stretch. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need volume. Just space. Finally, she said, "So what now?" And that's when I realized. I didn't have an answer. There was no script for this part. No parenting book tells you what to do. When your child becomes a stranger. With your voice. And your eyes. But none of your softness. So I said, I don't know. And it was the truest thing I'd said all year. I don't know where we go from here. But I know where I go. I go forward. With or without your permission. With or without your approval. She didn't respond. She just exhaled. A long, heavy breath. Then the line went quiet. No click. No goodbye. Just stillness. And for the first time, I didn't chase it. I didn't text her back. Didn't re-explain. Didn't soften the truth to protect her. I just stood up. Finished folding my laundry. And made tea. Not out of spite. Not to make a point. But because life kept going. And so would I. The ache was still there. Of course it was. But it no longer owned me. I could feel both things. The love and the limit. The history and the distance. I could grieve the daughter I'd raised. And accept the woman she became. Even if that woman no longer saw me as her safe place. And I knew one thing. As sure as I knew my own name. I would never forget who I was. Just to keep someone else comfortable again. I never heard back from her. Not a thank you. Not an "I understand." Not even anger. Just silence. And I let it be. Not because I didn't care. But because I finally understood something I had spent years ignoring. I can't make someone see me if they refuse to look. And I'm done begging to be seen. So I lived. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But intentionally. I went back to that little cabin in Skagit Valley. Booked it for a whole week this time. Brought books I'd never had time to read. A journal I'd been too tired to write in. And one morning, just as the fog was lifting off the trees, I sat with my feet in the cold grass. And felt content. Not happy. Not healed. Just still. And sometimes still is enough. I started learning to cook again. Not for someone else. Not because someone was coming over. Just for the smell. Just for the quiet joy of feeding myself. I started making space in my home. Boxed up old things. Let go of shoes I never wore. Photos I didn't want to look at. Guilt I couldn't carry anymore. I bought a plant. It's still alive. Barely, but it's trying. So am I. Some nights, I still reach for my phone. Still wonder if she's okay. If she's warm. If she remembers that I'm still here. But I don't send the text. Not out of pride. Not out of punishment. Out of peace. Because I finally understand. Being a mother doesn't mean being a martyr. And saying no doesn't mean you stopped loving. It just means you started loving wisely. I've had people ask if I regret it. If I'd go back and do it differently. I don't know. Maybe I'd say no sooner. Maybe I'd ask for more. Maybe I'd raise her with more boundaries. And less fear. But here's the thing no one tells you. Even when you do your best, you can't choose who your children become. You can only choose who you become. Once they leave. And I'm still becoming. Still learning. Still unfolding. One slow, honest breath at a time. Sometimes I see mothers in grocery stores. Tired, distracted, whispering "not now" to a whining child. and I want to hug them. Tell them, it's okay to want something for yourself. It's okay to be a person first. It's okay if your love doesn't look like sacrifice every second of the day. I used to think love meant giving everything. Now I know. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to stay. With yourself. For yourself. Maybe she'll come back one day. Maybe she won't. Maybe we'll sit down and talk like two women instead of one giver and one taker. Maybe she'll understand that I wasn't a villain for finally saying no, and I wasn't a victim for loving too long. I was just a mother trying to hold on before I learned to let go. And now I live, not waiting, not hoping, just living, with blueberry muffins on Sundays, with early morning walks, with the plant that's still struggling to grow, just like me. And that's enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the mother and her daughter? And what would you have done in her place? If you noticed any mistakes, feel free to let me know. The voiceover was created using AI, since I don't have a microphone yet for my own recordings. This was your Anna. Thanks for being here with me.